My name is Nancy, and I'm 27 years old. By most measures, I have a good life, steady job, my own apartment, and enough financial security to enjoy small luxuries without worrying about every dollar. But getting here wasn't easy. In fact, the journey was filled with more twists, betrayals, and lessons than I ever imagined. And if you'd asked me a few months ago whether I still had a family, I might have hesitated before answering. It all started when I was 15, the year my mother died. Losing her felt like losing the foundation of my world. My dad tried to hold things together, but grief changed him. He became quieter, less present. Then, barely a year later, he dropped a bombshell on me. "Nancy, I'd like you to meet Sarah," he said one evening in our kitchen, standing beside a woman who looked barely older than my cousin in college. "We're getting married." Sarah was at least 15 years younger than Dad, and she wasn't alone. She had a daughter, Kayla, who was 5 at the time, curly-haired, wide-eyed, and full of boundless energy. At first I didn't mind. In some ways, I even liked the idea of having a little sister. Kayla would sneak into my room at all hours, clutching her stuffed penguin, asking if we could watch cartoons together. For a while, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this new version of our family could work. But Sarah had other plans. She never liked me. That much became clear early on. At first it was subtle, walking past me in the hallway without a word, making sure I wasn't included in casual conversations. Then it escalated. I overheard her one day whispering to Kayla in the kitchen, "Honey, you don't have to spend so much time with Nancy," she said in that sickly sweet voice of hers. "She's not really your sister, you know? She's just your father's other daughter." From that moment, everything changed. Kayla stopped knocking on my door. She pulled away, little by little, until she barely acknowledged me at all. I tried to fight it at first, but what was the point? Sarah was determined to push me out, and my dad, whether intentionally or not, let it happen. So, I focused on school instead. I worked hard, got a scholarship, and when the time came, I packed my bags and left for college without looking back. That should have been the end of it. But years later, after barely speaking to my dad since I moved out, I got an unexpected phone call. "Nancy," he said, his voice hesitant, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. Come over for dinner this Sunday. Sarah would love to see you." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Sarah? The woman who went out of her way to make me feel like a stranger in my own home. She would love to see me? I should have said no. I should have trusted my gut and kept my distance. But curiosity got the better of me. Maybe things had changed. Maybe my father finally realized what had happened and wanted to make amends. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. And that, as I would soon find out, was my first mistake. I should have known. I should have expected it. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone rang. Sarah's number flashed on the screen, and I sighed, already bracing myself for whatever financial emergency they had cooked up this time. Maybe another utility bill. Maybe Kayla needed a new car now that she was about to start college. But when I picked up, Sarah's voice was practically vibrating with excitement. "Nancy, we've been planning something special," she gushed. "Kayla's turning 18 next month, and we want to make it absolutely perfect." I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. "Sarah, if you're about to ask me for—" "Oh, no," she cut me off, the fake sweetness in her voice grating on my nerves. "We already took care of everything. We just need you to pitch in a little for the catering, you know, since it's for family." That word, family. I swallowed my frustration and let out a slow breath. "Fine. Just send me the details." That was my second mistake. A few days later, my father called. "Nancy, honey," he began, his voice laced with that forced calm that only meant trouble. "We need to discuss something important. It's about Kayla's future." I sank into my armchair, already knowing where this was going. "Let me guess. College tuition?" He let out a relieved chuckle, as if I had done him a favor by guessing. "Yes, exactly! We knew you'd understand. You're so successful and Kayla really looks up to you. It would mean the world, if you could." "How much?" I interrupted. My voice was flat. Dad hesitated before throwing out a number. It wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't impossible for me. And despite everything, part of me wanted to say yes. Maybe this could be the thing that finally brought us together. Maybe this was my chance to finally be seen as a real sister. So I agreed. That was my third and final mistake. 2 days before Kayla's birthday party, my phone rang again. This time, Kayla's name flashing across the screen. I stared at it for a moment, my heart doing something stupid like hoping that she wanted to thank me, that she wanted to talk, just the two of us, like we used to before Sarah poisoned everything. I answered. Hey, Kayla, I said, keeping my voice light. I was just finalizing some party details. Yeah, about that, she said, her voice eerily calm. I'm going through the guest list right now. Mom and Dad invited way too many people, so I'm making some cuts. Something in my gut twisted. Okay, I'm cutting you from the list too. Silence. My grip tightened around my phone. What? It's nothing personal, she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. This party is for blood relatives and close friends only. You're neither. I felt my world tilt slightly, the room blurring around me. My throat tightened. Kayla, I don't understand. I'm your sister. She laughed. A sharp, cruel sound. No, you're not. That's kind of the point. A long, excruciating pause. And then, the final dagger. If you already got me a gift or whatever, you can just have it sent over. You know, by courier or something. And just like that, she hung up. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. A sick, ugly realization settled over me. I was never part of this family. I was just their ATM with legs. My breath hitched. My vision blurred. Then, something inside me snapped. I called my father, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. Dad, did you know about this? Did you know Kayla was uninviting me from her party? There was a heavy sigh on the other end. Oh, honey, don't take it so personally. You know how teenagers are. You're older and wiser. Dad, I cut him off, my voice cold. She explicitly told me I'm not family. Silence. Then, Sarah's voice cut in, sharp and dripping with condescension. Now you listen here, Nancy. You owe us. You're successful, you're rich. It's your duty to help your family, whether Kayla wants you there or not. My pulse pounded in my ears. You know what, Sarah? I said, my voice eerily calm. You're absolutely right. A beat of silence. Then, I hung up, and I called the catering company. Hello, I said smoothly. I need to change the delivery address for Saturday's order. Yes, the full order. All the appetizers, the main courses, the desserts, especially that 3-tier cake. Please deliver everything to the Hope Harbor shelter downtown instead. The woman on the other end hesitated. The homeless shelter? Yes, I confirmed. Every last bite. After I hung up, I sat back, exhaling slowly. They had wanted me to know my place in the family. Now they would. The morning of Kayla's birthday, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, enjoying the quiet. It was the best I had felt in years. No knots of anxiety in my stomach. No frantic texts asking for money. No pressure to play a role I had never been given a choice in. Just peace. Then my phone rang. I smirked when I saw Sarah's name flashing on the screen. Right on schedule. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice calm and casual. Morning, Sarah. Where is the catering? She shrieked, skipping straight to hysteria. They were supposed to be here an hour ago. If this is your idea of a joke. Oh, the catering. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. Don't bother waiting. Everything's been delivered to the Hope Harbor shelter. I'm sure they're enjoying it right now. Silence. Then, a low, dangerous whisper. You what? I stretched my legs out, feeling more relaxed than I had in years. Since I'm not family enough to attend the party, I figured I shouldn't impose my gift either. Kayla made it very clear she only wants close relatives and friends involved. I paused for dramatic effect. And as Dad so wisely pointed out, I need to respect her wishes. You spiteful little... Sarah's voice rose to a screech, but I barely heard it because, in the background, another voice had joined the chaos. Mom, what's happening? Where's the food? Kayla. I could picture her now, standing in the middle of their perfectly decorated backyard, guests arriving with expectant smiles, only to find empty tables and nothing but a frazzled Sarah running around like a headless chicken. I almost felt bad. Almost. Maybe they could order pizza. Sarah was still shrieking, but I'd already stopped listening. The panic, the desperation. This was a lesson they should have learned long ago. Actions have consequences. I ended the call, and I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb. For the next few days, I ignored the flood of texts and calls. Some were angry, my father demanding to know what I had done. Others were manipulative, Sarah pulling the "you've hurt this family" card. Kayla, of course, was silent. Then, 3 days later, Dad called again. This time, I answered. Nancy, honey, he started, his voice carefully measured, like he was trying to sound reasonable. We need to talk about what happened. I let out a short laugh. Oh, do we? What you did really hurt your sister, he said, his tone shifting into guilt mode. But I understand why you did it, and I forgive you. I blinked, then actually laughed out loud. You forgive me? Yes, Dad continued magnanimously, as if he were being so generous. It's water under the bridge now, but we need to discuss something more important. Kayla's college education? There it was. I cut him off before he could finish. Actually, Dad, there's nothing to discuss. I won't be paying for Kayla's education. Silence. Then, an explosion. What do you mean you won't pay? Dad's voice was suddenly frantic. You promised! You can't do this to your sister. My sister? I repeated, my voice cold. You mean the same sister who told me I'm not family, who uninvited me from her party because I wasn't blood? That sister? That was different, Dad sputtered. She was just being emotional. Family helps family, Nancy. You know that. I exhaled slowly, my patience evaporating. Exactly, Dad. Family helps family, and Kayla made it crystal clear that I'm not family. I'm just the ATM you all come to when you need money. Well, guess what? My voice hardened. The ATM is closed. You're being ridiculous, he shouted. After everything we've done for you? I laughed again, but this time, there was no humor in it. Everything you've done for me? My voice sharpened. Like what, exactly? Treating me like an outsider in my own home? Using me for money? Taking my kindness for granted while making sure I was never truly included? Dad was silent, and I knew, in that moment, that he had nothing to say. Goodbye, Dad, I said, my voice final. I hung up, and I felt free. The fallout was predictable. Within days, the family launched a full-scale campaign to guilt-trip me into submission. My phone buzzed non-stop with calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Nancy, you can't do this to your sister. She's just a kid. You have to help her. You're successful. You can afford it. Apparently, Dad and Sarah had been busy spreading their version of events to anyone who would listen, painting me as the selfish stepsister who abandoned poor Kayla. But they left out the real story, the part where they treated me like an outsider, the part where Kayla uninvited me from the party I was paying for, the part where Sarah had spent years making sure I was never part of their family. I stopped answering the calls. I blocked the numbers. I cut them off. And just like that, the noise disappeared. For the first time in years, I had silence. No more emergency bills. No more manipulative guilt trips. No more pretending. I looked around my apartment, my own space, built by me, funded by me, and for the first time in my life, I let myself breathe. 6 months later, I heard the latest drama through a friend who still kept in touch with the neighbors. Kayla had finally confronted Dad and Sarah about her tuition. She was confident they had the money. After all, they had been talking about college for years. That's when they had to confess the truth. They had spent their savings, not on her education, but on a luxury SUV. The fallout was glorious. Kayla screamed, demanded they sell the car. Sarah refused. Kayla staged a protest, refusing to move out or get a job until they figured out how to pay for her tuition. I laughed when I heard. After years of manipulating me, Sarah and Dad were finally facing the monster they created. But it wasn't my problem anymore. I had my own life, my own plans, and I was done funding their delusions. For the first time in my life, I was finally free. For the first time in years, my life was mine. No more late-night calls about unpaid bills. No more manipulative guilt trips. No more throwing money at a family that had only ever seen me as a walking ATM. Just peace. Real peace. At first, I expected to feel guilty, maybe even a little lost. After all, I had spent so much of my life trying to earn a place in my own family, bending over backward just to be acknowledged. But instead of guilt, all I felt was relief. It was like stepping out of a suffocating fog and finally breathing fresh air. I started doing things for myself, things I had always put off while taking care of everyone else. I booked my first real vacation, a 2-week trip to Europe, something I had always dreamed of, but never felt I could justify spending money on. I signed up for art classes, rediscovering a childhood passion that had been buried under years of obligation. I even adopted a dog, an excitable golden retriever named Toby, who greeted me with more love and loyalty in a single wag of his tail than my so-called family ever had. I thrived, and the best part? My bank account flourished without the constant financial drain. No more emergency expenses, no more guilt-ridden requests. I finally understood what it meant to live for myself. Of course, my father and Sarah didn't take the cut-off well. After the tuition debacle, Kayla had turned her full wrath on them, refusing to move out or contribute until they fixed the mess they made. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had spent years teaching Kayla that manipulation was the key to getting what she wanted. Now, that same tactic was being used against her. My father tried one last time to break through my silence, leaving me a long-winded voicemail about forgiveness and how family should always come first. I deleted it without listening to the rest. The truth was, I didn't hate them. I wasn't even particularly angry anymore. I was just done. Months passed. Life felt lighter, easier. Then, one evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, a text came in from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Kayla." I stared at the screen for a long time. A year ago, I might have jumped at the chance. I might have clung to the hope that she had changed, that she had finally realized how much she had hurt me. But now I saw it for what it was, a test. A test to see if I was still willing to be pulled back into their world, to be the safety net they had burned too many times. And I had my answer. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood up, stretched, and called Toby over for a walk. The evening air was crisp, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward, because this was freedom, and I wasn't giving it up for anything. Story 2. Let me tell you about the time my life imploded because of a lie. It all started with my buddy Alex and his sister Jessica. We grew up together, hung out sometimes, nothing major. Jessica was always a bit different. She had some mental health struggles, and while I didn't know the details, it was clear she had her challenges. Out of the blue, Jessica hits me up one day with some wild news. She's pregnant, and guess who she claims is the father? Yours truly. I swear my brain short-circuited. I'd never even hugged Jessica, let alone been intimate with her. "Jessica," I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no way I'm the father." She just kept repeating it, like somehow I was going to magically remember a night that never happened. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe this was part of her mental health struggles, but inside, I was freaking out. Here's where things went off the rails. Jessica refused to take a paternity test. "If you're so sure it's my kid," I said, "why wouldn't you just take the test and prove it?" But she wouldn't budge, just kept laying on the guilt trip. "You need to be there for your child, and you're abandoning us before the baby's even born." I wasn't buying it. I told her if she wasn't going to take the test, I wasn't signing anything. I wasn't about to get legally tied to a kid that wasn't mine. Simple, right? Wrong. Cue the family drama. My parents, bless their hearts, have this whole traditional values thing going on. The second they heard about the situation, they lost it, calling me names, saying I was a disgrace. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. It was like once they got it in their heads that I was responsible, they couldn't shake it. We had some nasty arguments. Things were said that I probably can't take back. They kept pushing me to do the right thing and step up as a father, even though I kept telling them it wasn't my kid. Here's the kicker. I wasn't even in the same state as Jessica when she would have gotten pregnant. She was staying at a friend's place for an entire month when she supposedly conceived. I brought this up to my parents, but they just brushed it off. "People make mistakes," they said. Yeah, well, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown accusation that could wreck my life. Fast forward 6 months. By this point, my entire family had turned against me. Every family dinner, every phone call, every text, it was all about how I needed to man up and take responsibility. I was losing my mind. It was like I was trapped in a nightmare. Then, my parents dropped the bomb. If I didn't step up and act like a father, they were cutting me off, disowning me. At first, I thought they were bluffing, but they were dead serious. And sure enough, when I didn't cave, they did it. They disowned me. Let me tell you, that hurt. I was pissed off, confused, and just plain hurt. These were the people who raised me, who were supposed to have my back, and they chose to believe someone else over me. My own family threw me out like I didn't matter. Things got even weirder after the baby was born. My mom was there at the hospital, playing the role of proud grandma. I didn't even know until later. Jessica still wouldn't take the paternity test, so I had to go through some legal hoops to get it done. When the results came in, guess what? Not my kid. 0% chance. I felt this wave of relief and anger all at once. I sent the results to my parents, thinking, finally they'll see the truth. They'll realize they were wrong, and everything will go back to normal. Nope. Instead, they started blowing up my phone with apologies, offers of money, begging me to forgive them. My dad even sent me a few $100 in the mail, like that was gonna fix things. But here's the thing, I kept the money. Yeah, I took it. I felt like they owed me for all the crap they put me through. But forgive them? No way. I made it clear that if they were willing to disown me over something like this, I wasn't going to risk opening myself up to that kind of betrayal again. Most of my friends were on my side, but a few, along with my therapist, started saying things like, maybe you should give them another chance. They're your parents after all, and I get it. I really do. But how do you just forgive someone who was ready to throw you away so easily? How do you trust someone who believed a lie over their own child? That's where I was. Stuck, knowing I did nothing wrong, but wondering if I should even bother trying to fix things with my family. But every time I thought about it, I remembered how quickly they turned on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they failed me when I needed them most. After everything that went down with my parents and Jessica's baby drama, you'd think things would calm down, right? Nope. Life had other plans for me. If anything, the whole mess just kept spiraling. You'd think proving I wasn't the dad would have been the end of it, but I wish it was that simple. Turns out, when people don't want to admit they messed up, they'll do anything to avoid taking responsibility. So, after the paternity test results came in and confirmed I wasn't the father, I thought, okay, now my parents will realize they were wrong, and maybe things can get back to normal. But instead of relief, things got way more complicated. First off, Jessica completely lost it. She started spreading rumors around town that I had faked the test or somehow tampered with it. Yeah, you read that right. In her mind, I had somehow convinced a whole lab to rig the results in my favor. Like, how would I even do that? I'm just a regular guy, not some mastermind who knows how to manipulate DNA tests. But Jessica wasn't hearing any of it. She was dead set on making me the bad guy in her story. She went around telling people that I was abandoning her and the baby, that I'd tricked everyone into thinking I wasn't the dad. It didn't make sense, but it didn't matter. People started to believe her. Small-town rumors spread fast, and soon I had folks giving me dirty looks at the grocery store, like I was some kind of scumbag. I even had people straight up confront me, asking why I wasn't stepping up to take care of my kid. It was infuriating. I had the test results to prove I wasn't the father, but no one seemed to care. Jessica was out there playing the victim, and I was getting blamed for something I had no part in. I'd never felt so helpless in my life. It's one thing when your family turns on you, but when the whole town starts thinking you're the bad guy, that hits different. And my parents? Well, they were still trying to play nice, but it was clear they didn't know how to handle the situation either. My mom kept calling, leaving these long, emotional voicemails about how she just wanted her family back together. She didn't even address what had happened. She just wanted to sweep everything under the rug like nothing had ever gone down. She even suggested I come over for dinner, like that was going to magically fix all the damage they'd done. It wasn't just awkward, it was insulting. After everything they put me through, they thought a few family dinners and some fake smiles would make it all okay? No apology, no acknowledgement of how badly they messed up, just, let's move on. It was like they didn't even realize how much trust they had shattered. And that's the thing. Once trust is broken like that, it's not something you can just patch up with a meal and a hug. It takes real work, real effort to rebuild, and they weren't even willing to admit they were wrong. The kicker came when my dad tried to bribe me. He straight up sent me an email offering to buy me a new car if I would come back to the family. Like, what? They think they can just buy my forgiveness. It was so out of touch with reality that I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared at the email for a while, trying to figure out if this was some kind of sick joke. But nope, my dad was serious. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What do you even say to something like that? They didn't care about fixing things the right way. They just wanted me back in their lives because it was convenient for them, and the fact that they thought throwing money at me would solve everything. It made me realize how little they actually understood what they'd done. But the worst part came later, when I found out Jessica had started reaching out to people I knew, trying to drag them into her drama. She even contacted my ex-girlfriend Samantha and tried to convince her that I was this terrible person who had abandoned his kid. Sam and I hadn't spoken in years, but out of the blue, I get a text from her saying, "We need to talk." At first, I had no idea what she was talking about, but when she explained that Jessica had been messaging her, trying to stir up old drama, I just about lost it. I called Jessica and told her to stop. I was done with the games, done with the lies, and I wasn't going to let her drag my friends and exes into her mess. but she just laughed and hung up on me. It was like talking to a wall. She was so wrapped up in her fantasy world that nothing I said would get through to her. At this point, I was seriously considering getting a lawyer involved. I didn't want to take it that far, but what choice did I have? Jessica was out here ruining my reputation. My parents were enabling her behavior, and I felt like I had no one in my corner. My closest friends supported me, sure, but even they didn't know the full extent of how bad things had gotten. Eventually, I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this constant state of stress, waiting for the next rumor to pop up, or the next crazy accusation to come my way. I decided to cut ties completely, not just with Jessica, but with my parents too. It wasn't easy. It sucked, actually, but I knew I couldn't keep letting them drag me down. I wrote my parents a long email explaining everything, how I felt betrayed, how they had failed me, how I couldn't trust them anymore. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them straight up that I wasn't ready to forgive them, and I didn't know if I ever would be. I told them that if they wanted any chance at a relationship with me in the future, they'd have to start by actually apologizing and taking responsibility for their actions. No more pretending everything was fine. No more sweeping things under the rug. As for Jessica, I blocked her on everything. I couldn't deal with her manipulations anymore. She wasn't my problem, and I wasn't going to let her keep dragging me into her mess. I even had to tell Alex, her brother, that I couldn't be around his family for a while. That was tough, because Alex has always been a good friend, but I had to put my own well-being first. It's been a few months since I cut them off, and honestly, it's been a relief. Sure, there are days when I feel guilty or second-guess myself, but overall, I know I made the right call. Sometimes you have to walk away, even when it's hard. And yeah, it's messy and complicated, but at least now, I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster to hit. I can finally breathe again. But man, if you told me a year ago that this is where I'd end up, I never would have believed you. Life's funny like that, I guess. Alright, so here's where things get even weirder. I thought cutting ties with Jessica and my parents would be the end of the chaos. Like, I figured once I removed them from my life, everything would calm down, and I could move on. But of course, things don't work out that easily. Cutting them off? That was just the beginning of a whole new mess. A couple of weeks after I sent that email to my parents and blocked Jessica, I get this unexpected message from an old high school friend, Mike. We hadn't talked in years, but out of nowhere, he's asking if I'm doing okay. At first I'm thinking, okay, that's random, but then he tells me that my parents reached out to him. Now, Mike and I weren't even that close back in the day, so for my parents to contact him, that was a huge red flag. Apparently, they'd been going around trying to get people to talk to me on their behalf. I'm talking old friends, distant relatives, even people I barely know. They were telling everyone that I was in a bad place, and that they were worried about me. It was like they were trying to make me seem like the one who was unstable, and the worst part, they were framing the whole thing as if I was the one who needed to apologize for cutting them off. Mike was cool about it. He knew something was up and wanted to give me a heads up, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from all sorts of people I hadn't spoken to in years, people I'd only met a few times. They were all saying the same thing. Your parents are really worried about you, or you should give them another chance. It was insane. They had somehow convinced all these people that I was the bad guy in this situation, that I had gone off the rails and needed to make amends. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, just trying to move on with my life, and my parents were out here doing a full-on PR campaign, trying to make me look like the villain. I felt like I was in some kind of weird alternate reality, where nothing made sense. No matter how much I tried to stay away from the drama, it just kept finding its way back to me. The final straw came when they reached out to my boss. Yeah, you heard that right. My parents called my job. I don't even know how they got the number, but they somehow tracked down my boss's contact info and called the office, telling him they were concerned about me and that I wasn't in the right headspace. Can you imagine how humiliating that was? My boss pulled me into his office one day, looking all serious, and asked if everything was okay at home. I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say at first. Like, what do you say when your boss is asking if your parents think you've gone off the deep end? I explained the whole situation to him, and luckily, he was super understanding about it. He even apologized for bringing it up, but man, the damage was done. My own parents were out there trying to mess with my job now. It felt like they were determined to ruin everything for me, just because I wouldn't bend to their will. After that, I had no choice. I went to a lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order against them. I didn't want to take things that far, but what choice did I have? They were messing with my career, my friends, my peace of mind. I had to protect myself, even if it meant legally cutting them off. The process was long and stressful. There were court dates, paperwork, and just a whole lot of anxiety that came with it. But at the same time, I felt a weird sense of relief, like finally, I was taking control of the situation. No more letting them invade every part of my life. No more letting them manipulate the narrative. Of course, when they found out about the restraining order, all hell broke loose. My mom sent me this long, guilt-trippy email about how she never imagined her own son would do this, and how family is supposed to stick together no matter what. She kept saying that I was tearing the family apart, that I was the one causing all the pain. It was textbook manipulation, but I didn't bite. I didn't respond. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but things got even worse before they got better. One day, I came home from work to find my car vandalized. Someone had keyed the word liar into the side of it. I had no proof it was my parents, but come on, who else would it be? I hadn't told anyone about the restraining order, except for a few close friends. My parents were the only ones who had a motive to pull something like that. It was like they couldn't handle losing control, so they had to lash out in whatever way they could. I filed a police report, but nothing ever came of it. Just another reminder that even when you try to do things the right way, sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can turn into your worst enemies. I started parking my car at a friend's house after that, just to be safe. I couldn't take any more chances. I even installed security cameras around my apartment, just in case they tried something else. It felt like I was living in a constant state of paranoia, always waiting for the next shoe to drop. But eventually, things started to calm down. The restraining order went through, and my parents were officially barred from contacting me or coming anywhere near my home or workplace. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could finally breathe. It's been a few months now, and I'm still picking up the pieces. I had to do a lot of damage control with my friends and coworkers, explaining the whole situation to them and making sure they knew the truth. Most of them were supportive, but a few were skeptical, like, "Are you sure your parents would really go that far?" I get it. It's hard to believe, but when you've lived through it, you know how far some people will go when they feel like they're losing control. Looking back, I never imagined things would get this bad. It's crazy how quickly family can turn on you when you refuse to play by their rules. But I've learned something important through all of this. You can't let anyone, not even your family, dictate how you live your life. Sometimes, you have to make the hard choice to walk away, even when it hurts. I don't know what the future holds for me and my parents. Maybe one day they'll realize what they did and apologize for real. Maybe not. But either way, I'm done letting them control my life. I've got my own path to follow, and I'm not looking back.